Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And members, this is the Alec Smith emergency insulin provision. And had you sat in the conference committee, you'd understand how important this is. It was tragic, the story that we heard from Alec's mother. And hearing the testimony, it brought almost everybody in the room to tears. And it's hard to believe that this day and age, anybody would have to lose their life because they could not access insulin. And what this provision does is it establishes a 90-day emergency supply for people who cannot afford it. Friends, this is the right thing to do. And I understand that this was up on the Senate floor and it failed. And we're taking a little bit different approach than the Senate. The Senate had a registration fee. We are funding this through, or my provision here is funding this through the Healthcare Access Fund. This is the right thing to do, and I think everybody understands that. Alec Smith, that's a name that we've heard, and I hope that's a name we never forget. I also serve on the Attorney General Task Force with his mother, Nicole Smith Holt, and I've talked to her and understand again, heard firsthand how tragic this is. We have the right thing to do by supporting this amendment, and I ask for your support.
The member from Hennepin, Representative Howard.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I do thank Representative Hamilton for bringing this amendment and for your words and for your work this session on prescription drugs and to put a real human face on what we're doing here and the costs at stake for folks. And what you said, the name Alec Smith, I hope that we all remember that name. And, members, I've had Alec's photo on my desk all session long. And to remind myself about why I'm here and to spark conversation with all my colleagues here. And absolutely, no one should lose their life because they cannot afford the insulin they need to survive. And I've been fighting for that all session long. And I do want to mention there is one difference in this amendment than the Alec Smith Emergency Insulin Act that we adopted here, and it's an important one. The amendment here would pay for this needed fund out of Healthcare Access Fund dollars. The Alec Smith Emergency Insulin Act would pay with the manufacturer's fee on the insulin manufacturers that have made billions and billions of dollars while jacking up the price of insulin over 1,200% over the last 10 years. An insulin vial that cost $20 in the 1990s now costs $300. Over on the Senate floor, we heard Republicans say, one of the drug manufacturers, Eli Lilly, they are offering a half-price insulin, so we don't need to do the Emergency Insulin Act. That drug still costs over $150 a vial, and I just want, since Sanofi was mentioned by the Senate Republicans, I want to mention that Sanofi, Eli Lilly, they had profits of $25 billion, or revenue of $25 billion last year, and profits of $600 million last year. And they paid an effective tax rate of $0 last year. These companies have made billions of dollars, and they absolutely should be held accountable for the harm that they've caused. That is vital.
This has been a conflicting thing for me because I understand that a lot of the public wants us to do something about this. But where I draw the line is I understand our legislative restraint and what we can do at the legislature, and what you just spoke about so passionately is making companies pay for what they did. And at the legislature, we can't assess punitive damages to companies. That's not the role of the legislature. That's the role of the courts. And that's why I support, rarely, our Attorney General Keith Ellison in his lawsuit against the manufacturers of opiates, because if they cause damages, then it should be handled in the court, where we expect $1 trillion lawsuit for their damages. And if insulin companies are price gouging and using illegal practices, we should assess punitive damages in the court of law. It's not our role to be judge, jury, and executioner in assessing punitive damages to companies. We can set regulations, and I know what they're doing in Colorado with setting maximum prices on copays and things. When we start price fixing and setting prices, then the amount of money from pharmaceutical companies will pour into the legislature to buy votes to set prices that are favorable to them. The free market, as free as it can be in this industry that's so heavily regulated, has responded with bringing half-price insulin to the market. And I hope that they do more, because there is a demand. But I would much rather pay for emergency insulin supplies out of our general fund, out of our healthcare access fund, which is what it should be used for at healthcare costs, as opposed to being a laundromat for legislatures. We should be using this money for good and not burying it in the ground for broadband or doing other stuff. If we want to do this today, we should do this and make the Senate vote on this bill. I'm going to vote green. I will vote your green over here, and you can vote my red that I usually vote. But this is a good bill, and this is passionate, and people that are following you for this cause, they should want this, because it'll get what they want to do. And it's not our role to hold companies accountable with punitive damages and make them pay, which is, I know, the passion of what we want to do with opiates and with insulin, but that's not the role of the legislature. And if we start setting precedent like that, then you're going to get people running for office and assessing fines to companies, and it's unconstitutional. This is the role of the courts, but we can actually fund programs and do good through the general fund and through the healthcare access fund, so I'm going to vote green in this bill.
Again, I want to reiterate what Representative Munson was saying. I am very grateful that Representative Hamilton is giving us a different language version, Representative Howard, to show the Senate this is our cards. But I heard Alex's story because you brought it to us at HHS Finance. Don't you dare give up on this tonight because you're afraid of what someone else might do. That's the one thing I've learned around this place is you never give up. You've had his picture in front of you the whole session. Don't you dare vote red tonight.
So I would just encourage you to, if you're thinking about voting red, I would encourage you to vote green on this, because again, it is the right thing to do. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Any further discussion? The clerk will take the roll. The clerk will close the roll. There being 39 ayes and 82 nays, the motion does not prevail, and the A7 amendment is not adopted.